Well, we fight for religious freedom for Christians a lot. You wouldn't think we'd have to do that, but I think there's two things going on. First of all, it's open season on Christians around the world, in some places quite violently, the Middle East and China. But even here in the Christian West, Christianity is being driven from the public square in trivial ways, like the saying of Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, but in fundamental and important ways, like deracinating the Christian roots of our institutions, removing the Lord's Prayer from the beginning of legislatures, even taking God Keep Our Land out of the anthem. That hasn't happened yet. Give it a few years. But sometimes it is quite acute, as in the case of the Cornerstone Christian Academy, a small private Christian school in Alberta that's actually joined a public school board. So it is under the public auspices. I shouldn't call it private. It's under a public school board. One of the good things about Alberta is that it allows a diversity of schools within the public system. Well, that came crashing to a halt when the head of the school board said, yeah, all that Christian stuff you guys are teaching, I've got an editor's pen and I'm just going to black out those portions of the Bible that I don't like very much and some people might find offensive. If you think I'm exaggerating, I tell you I'm not. In emails to the school, the head of the school board, Lori Scory is her name, says that certain passages in the Bible, such as 1 Corinthians, are no longer permitted. Well, we fought back with our best fighting friend, John Carpay, the head of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. I knew he'd be on this case. He's there, and so were we, and he joins us now in studio for an update. John, great to see you. Thanks for joining us here in our studios.
Good to see you, Ezra.
Did I accurately give a little bit of the background of this case?
Yes, the Cornerstone Christian Academy is an alternative program within a publicly funded school board.
So I was wrong to say private because it's in the public school board.
But the Alberta law specifically deliberately provides for full public funding for these alternative schools.
That's a good thing.
So you have schools that some might focus on arts or music or sport or foreign language or a religious school.
Yeah.
So this was a fully funded religious school within the public system, and by law it's allowed to be religious because the whole purpose of the law is to provide some real diversity, real choice for parents.
It's called the Cornerstone Christian Academy.
For a reason.
Just like there's Muslim schools too, by the way, that teach the Quran.
Yes.
It's incredible to me. Can you give more particulars? I mentioned Lori Scory, the head of the school board, saying we don't like 1 Corinthians because it's offensive. There were other. She said that anything that might offend someone cannot be taught if it's from the Bible.
They also made this ridiculous claim that human rights legislation prevents a Christian school from teaching the Bible in its entirety. And if there's some verses that are offensive to some individuals, then that's a human rights violation. And it's ridiculous. Even their own lawyer was asked, where in the human rights legislation does it say this? And he was not able to come up with any specific provision.
Well, and that's the thing. They are just being bullies. And even after you were retained by the Cornerstone Christian Academy and you sent a ferocious but meticulously footnote, I think it was an 8-page letter.
We put it up. Letter outlining, the charter, the
I
human
shouldn't
rights
say ferocious. Ferocious implies that it was wild. It was cold-blooded. It was cool. Tick, tick, tick. Here's the law. Here's what you're doing. Let me take back the word ferocious. They basically hit reply and rejected it.
They said it changes nothing, and they didn't even respond to what we had set out about the charter and administrative law and human rights legislation and so on. They just ignored the contents and came back later the same day and said, yeah, well, our demand is still there, that you cannot be reading or studying or teaching offensive Bible verses.
You know what? I know that Lori Scory and the politically correct bosses at this school board would never in a million years say that to a Muslim school teaching the Quran, which, by the way, has bloodthirsty passages about how to deal with infidels, how to deal with apostates, how to deal with errant women, how to, the idea that they would go after the New Testament and it's not shocking.
And it's all religious texts. I mean, the Torah has got some pretty severe penalties, even for being disrespectful to your own parents. To get you the death penalty.
Yeah, I'm glad we don't live under that theocracy. Give us an update since that 8-page letter.
So they met privately, and they had some good discussions, and by Friday, June 23rd, thereabouts, they had basically reached an agreement, and the school board had said, you know what, you're right, we're not going to censor Bible verses.
Oh.
They backed down.
Oh, good. And that was after you sent the letter, so maybe they thought,
well, that was after they sat down together and met face to face. So they had some representatives from the school, some representatives of the board, and they sat down and they had two lengthy face-to-face meetings. At the end of which they were on the same page, and the school board agreed, we're not going to try to censor Bible verses. So it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. Then they were going to go public with that, and it was going to be final and signed and whatnot. And then the school board said, well, here's this addendum that we want you to sign that will prevent you from speaking to the school's parents or to the media or to anyone.
Hang on, from speaking to parents.
Yeah, and not just about the past, which may have been a reasonable request, but going forward in the future, this is a gag order. And the school rejected that.
How can a school not talk to the school parents? If my school didn't talk to me, I'd say, what are you doing? I'm a parent. Talk to me about this and this and this. How can you tell a school not to talk to parents?
Well, bullies like to operate.
That's a whole other level of crazy.
The problem here is that if the school signed off on this gag order, then 3 or 6 or 9 months in the future, if the school board came back at the school again and said, you know, we don't like the way that you're teaching the Bible, or we want you to teach it a certain way, or we want you to teach added materials, then the school would not be able to talk about that publicly. So that derailed it, unfortunately. So the school board agreed they were not going to censor the Bible verses, but then they said, we want you to sign this gag order that you're not allowed to communicate with media or parents. And then the school board, Thursday the 29th at 9 p.m., hand-delivered a letter to the school's representative, after having first emailed the parents of the school to inform them that the deal was off, and then dropped off the letter to the school board leaders and said, we're giving you a 1 year's notice, so at the end of the 2017-18 school year, game over, you're no longer part of our public school board.
So what happens to the school a year from now?
Well, their choices would be to try to become an independent school, of which there are many in Alberta. I've heard it said, I don't know if it's true, that the NDP government is not providing new accreditations to further.
That was going to be another one of my questions. Has the NDP Education Minister, Dave Eggen, who is an anti-Christian bigot, there is no other way to phrase it, has he said a word about this?
Not to my knowledge. He hasn't spoken up about it.
I bet you $1 that he's the guy who scuppered this deal.
Well, we've had information that some of the school board trustees have been in touch with the NDP government, and we put in some FOI requests, but we haven't.
When you get those back, come back here. If I can tell you this, John, if some rogue school board bureaucrat told a Muslim school you can't teach any passages about killing infidels. Oh, I bet you David Eggen would be all over the front pages. But when you got an anti-Christian bigot saying you can't teach the Christian Bible, Dave Eggen is just, no problem. He doesn't need to weigh in. Everything's going the way he wants. So what is there any more legal stuff you can do? We, as you know,
well, there's more now than what there was 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, we had put in a lot of time and effort on the file to do the legal research. Right? You know, when you write an 8-page legal letter,
that's a lot of work.
There's a lot of
research
hours of research that go into that. I don't know what we're going to do going forward. We've got school board trustee elections coming up in October.
So are you serious?
If Laurie Scory and company are voted out of office and replaced with people that have some respect for the law,
stuff like that. You remember years ago when you helped us out in Nanaimo? And just let me just talk to the viewers for a second. I don't know if you remember. This was back at Sun News. I think it was 2014, around there. I'll have to check the date. Nanaimo, city, 80,000 people, really bullied a Christian conference. It was called LeaderCast.
Yes.
They ripped up a contract at the convention center and said that Christian bigots are like, they compared them to Al-Shabaab, the terrorist group
in Nigeria.
Yeah, it was.
Or Kenya.
And
Boko Haram in Nigeria.
Boko Haram, that's what, it wasn't Al-Shabaab, they said Boko Haram. They were comparing Christians to Muslim terrorists. They were comparing them to the mafia. It was so shocking. You came in and scared them off legally, but later that fall, we had an election. And the mayor was thrown out. most of the worst counselors were thrown out, and the one guy who was fair to Christians became the new mayor.
The new mayor, yeah.
John, let's have a talk offline. I mean, this is very exciting news, and
so if there are
well, I know what I'm doing this fall.
If there are trustees,
I know what I'm doing in October.
If there's different trustees elected, then after October, the new board can simply say, look, we're canceling our cancellation and
John,
we're reversing the decision.
I would like to hand you a check on behalf of the Rebel and our viewers for $5,244 from our Rebel viewers. John, thank you for fighting for religious freedom and freedom of expression and freedom of association for everyone, including Christians who should not be below the law.
Well, thank you, and my thanks to yourself and to all the viewers. And we do rely entirely on voluntary donations from people. We don't ask for or receive any government funding. And so, we've got a dozen cases all over Canada, 3 full-time lawyers, so it's every bit helps. So I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate you and what you're doing. If you weren't there, they would have been steamrolled 5 additional ways. Are you at liberty to tell us if there's any other legal moves you're going to make right now, or are you just sort of checking it out and trying to come up with a strategy?
Well, we had 365 days notice,
right.
So it's not urgent to
right.
make a decision in the next day or two.
Right.
So we're going to be evaluating the situation, and there's a possibility of legal action, but we'll have to talk with our clients. But and there's also that factor that in a few months' time, all 7 of these school board trustees are up for re-election.
Well,
so who knows how that's going to play itself out?
Well, I have an idea of what I'd like to do. Folks, if you haven't chipped in yet, let's keep this petition open. We call it therealbigots.com. And if there's no more legal work here, well, we can just pay it forward to whatever other Christian freedom of religion cases you have, because you're always fighting.
Yeah, and and freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of association. I mean, we've got cases from BC to Nova Scotia.
Yeah, well, I know, and we've worked with you on a number of them. I'm glad you reminded me of that in the Nanaimo event. If there are other legal moves here in the future, please let us know, because I get the feeling that our viewers are really mad about what happened. I know I am. And if there is a strategy by the Alberta NDP government to pick off any Christian schools, anyone who teaches the Bible, I feel a personal moral obligation to help. I know you do too, and I think a lot of our viewers would.
Thank you.
All right, stay in touch, my friend.
All right.
Hey, if you like that, sign up for my show every day. Click on the screen to subscribe.